My name's Stig Richards. I work here, Sound Alliance. We are an online publisher, in fact, Australia's largest online publisher of digital channels for 18 to 29-year-olds. And we also have a marketing division and agency, if you like, that specialises in that demographic. The presentation I'm giving has a very long version that I normally have the pleasure of sharing with 3 other guys. Today I had the pleasure of putting a big X across the front of their faces because I'm doing it solo in 10 minutes. I'm going to talk fast. I'm presenting, it's a summary of a research presentation that, that we've done once or twice into Australian youth. It's actually one of the biggest formal research studies into Australian youth. We use the output to develop strategies for our clients and also to develop our own media properties. This year, as you can see, we've called it "Where Have All the Rebels Gone?" for reasons that will probably become apparent. Once upon a time, different ideas, opinions, attitudes were everywhere, and they were relatively easy to spot. You could identify rebels. They were hippies, they were punks, they were mods, they were goths. They would gather in groups, they went to gigs together, they marched, they protested, they created movements, they created music, and in their own ways they tried to change the world. And the world needs rebels. These are people who aren't happy with the status quo. They're people who don't just ask why or why not, but they act. And in different ways their actions benefit all of us. Rebels invent, some of them create for our benefit, others question things, some of them reinvent, depending on whose version of the story of the creation of Facebook you actually believe, and others sacrifice. Meanwhile, in Australia, we've got young people profoundly influenced by technology with their own hopes and fears, and today I'll try in a few minutes to find out whether they're angry, whether they're conservative, or whether they're just perfectly content. Quickly on the methodology, because despite appearances on the screen, this was actually serious research. We commissioned Pollinate as our research partner. They're based here in Sydney, but they do work around the world. We briefed them to explore the passions, hopes, fears, the social media usage, the media usage, interpretation of brand, and so on of 18 to 29s. There was a 30-minute quant survey in the hypothesis phase. Qual interviews in the hypothesis phase. Then we interviewed professionals whose job it is to influence young people. And then there was the 30-minute quant survey that, once we'd cleaned the data, had 1,906 respondents that constitute the data that I'll paraphrase today. 459,000 data points, so you can understand I have shrunk this a bit to get it into 10 minutes. So back to the narrative. Times change. Times have always changed. I think Albert Einstein kind of told us that some time back. But in recent years, they've changed faster than ever. If you go back, not all that long, but families would gather around a TV, office workers would share news around the water cooler, key issues of the day or the week or the month or the year would occupy the media and people's minds for sustained periods of time. And these events shaped our opinions, they shaped our ideas and even our ideals. Now, increasingly, the brevity of events is lost because hierarchy disappears when everything shares equal space in a social feed, or the social feed of digital natives, if you like. So the news on TV, on radio and newspapers, where less and less people are actually engaging with it, is sequential in order of importance. But nowadays, most people are getting the news through social streams, and what they're getting is increasingly self-determined. Facebook's founder himself, Mark Zuckerberg, rather inelegantly put it that a squirrel dying in front of your house may be more relevant to your interests right now than people dying in Africa. It's probably not the quote he wants to be remembered for, but it does illustrate that people are suffering what we're calling info-besity. Young people, 18 to 29, and even younger, to Dan's point, they're constantly snacking on lolcats, on Psy, on a week of the Harlem Shake, but similarly, they're just nibbling on Syria, or European austerity, or tsunamis, or Australian politics. The latter is probably not that interesting, but regardless, their attention to it is diminishing. In the past, our lives were punctuated by key events that informed and changed us, but young adults' lives today are this unrelenting stream of other people's consciousness. We get a veneer of superficial detail all the time, no matter how unimportant, alongside the important stuff. Not long ago, the technology itself was quite hard. You had to be a geek or into gadgets in order to sort of work the devices. Now the devices are simple. Keeping up with that constant flow of information is what's got really hard. So back to the research. Within the context of this stream of information, how do people see themselves when they've lived in almost exclusively good times and nothing to define a generation? And by that, I mean, if you think sort of war, terrorism, even recession are things that young people have constantly been told about, but none of them have really affected them personally. If you take things that, if you're slightly older, you might think were relatively recent, and I mean things like September 11th or the Bali bombing. If you're 19, 20, 21, that was more than half your life ago, and your parents probably didn't let you watch it on TV. So in the context, how do they see themselves? They're pretty positive, they're pretty optimistic, ambitious, progressive. If you go to the bottom right-hand side here to the ones that are circled, 57% say they're more planned than spontaneous, 91% say they're more respectful than irreverent. Now, if I think back to my early 20s, planned and irreverent are not terms that I or my parents would have used to describe me. With this generation, there's no real sign that they're going to fight for their right to party. If you think back not long ago, one of the marketing blogs that likes to make up words, which is fun anyway, but they briefly termed this generation content. They were constantly creating photos, videos, check-ins, and so on and so forth. We sat around the office and thought for a moment that we might want to rebrand them, and what we came up with, instead of generation content, we'd call them generation content. I wouldn't bother trying to tweet that because it'll make no sense to any of your followers. But so looking at that kind of optimism, where are their influences? It's this narrowing of their worldview, and there's lots of things that are scary about it, which I don't have time to go into now. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't interact with things on Facebook, Facebook won't show them to you. So if you're serious news, if you've asked for serious news and you did nothing about it when it arrived, you won't get the serious news anymore. It's the nature of the EdgeRank algorithm. A bit more on Facebook, and this is where I'm going to differ from Dan ever so slightly, but 93% of our respondents say they're using it daily. It's not just the social media powerhouse anymore. It's the subjectively curated window on the world for most people. They're choosing what they want to see, and then, as I said, Facebook's EdgeRank algorithm will decide what of those things it will actually show them. It's the personalized internet. It's the homepage for just about everything, and it's won the race to become the commercialized internet. So while other things are coming into play, and I don't dispute the relevance of any of them, many of them get their strength from their ability to play within the Facebook infrastructure. So it's not cool anymore, but it doesn't need to be, in the same way that water doesn't need to be cool, but you still drink it. Air doesn't need to be cool, but you still breathe it. It's part of the fabric of everyday life for young people. 75% of our respondents said they're using it multiple times a day, driven principally by mobile. Now, this isn't Facebook's data. This is data from some of our websites and how our content is spreading increasingly through mobile. So we do about 1 million UBs a month across our websites between 18 and 29 years old. And you can imagine what life would have been like for us if we didn't have a mobile strategy, or at least we didn't see the early indicators of the need to develop a mobile strategy. So, quick summary at roughly halfway. Their worldview, closed, cloistered, locked up. They're getting most of their news via a filtered feed. Fewer external points of view have a chance to get traction in their lives. They're comfortable with the status quo, and they've got nothing really to rebel against. Could be good, could be bad. I'm undecided. But we asked another question well, not within context, it was before we started to develop the narrative, but who are their heroes? And I stress the word heroes. That was the question we asked. Who are your heroes? We thought, could have been Steve Jobs, they obviously like Apple products. Could have been Mark Zuckerberg, they're using his platform sort of 93% of them every day, but it wasn't. Could it be someone like Barack Obama, who, because we don't actually have enigmatic leaders in Australia, you have to look elsewhere for people that are interesting. Wasn't any of those. Sorry, brief rant. Any guesses? Haven't got time. Mum and dad. Hero, mum and dad, 18 to 29-year-olds. 31% of respondents said parents or other close family member. 2% said friends. No one that you might think of as a leader or a figurehead or an inventor or creator got more than 1%. So it looks like, everything's pretty good in life. You've got nothing really to worry about. Mum and dad are tops. But we asked a two-box question, and that was, do you think you have many fears or do you have no fears at all? Now, obviously it's polarizing, but sometimes research questions need to be. And this is a real contradiction to us. They've told us they're confident, optimistic, had it good, blah, blah, blah. But 75% are saying they've got lots of fears. They're also, bear in mind, the most educated generation of all time. So there's this possibility that within all the good stuff, there's this sort of fear seeping in that they've had it too good and they're not entirely sure what comes next. Most of their fears can be categorized in two ways. FOMO is fairly well documented, the fear of missing out. So you've got to go to the party, you've got to go on that holiday, you've got to go to the festival and so on. But increasingly FONK, or the fear of not knowing, was coming through. So needing to stay on top of everything that comes through the digital feed, sort of Instagram pics, status updates, new memes, so on and so forth. The digital snacks that are the sort of the info-besity element of things. Checking Facebook last thing at night and first thing in the morning, just in case you miss out on something. And it's actually exhausting. I'll reinforce the point that Dan made earlier. There's a separate piece of research that shows that there is a dopamine response in the brain for getting lots of likes on Facebook. So you are a rat in a maze, and you're getting to the end and you're getting the cheese just by posting something that gets a lot of likes, despite the fact that the person who's scrolling through just going like. That is actually changing people's behaviour pattern. Don't try and read all of this. I'll pull out the important bits for now. 85% say that right now it's important to keep up with news on a wide range of topics, and 80% say that life now is about finding their passion and purpose. Correlation? We think there probably is. They're so busy keeping up with lots and lots of stuff that they're not investing in a passion or purpose. Now, I'll try and demonstrate this graphically. So if you can imagine that these are your prospective interests, you might be interested in cars, AFL, crime novels, particular type of music, art house cinema, stamp collecting, whatever your things are, but you've got limited capacity and limited time. When you get passionate about something, you have to sacrifice peripheral interest to dig deeper on one thing, both in regards to time, energy, interest, discussion, and so forth. Young people today, they're living a mile wide and an inch deep. So they're not developing a passion for things because they're so obsessed with keeping hold of or keeping abreast of so many things with shallow engagement. Another way of putting that is inch deep doesn't create passion. Tweet that one. So another way of looking at that is, are they too busy taking a photo to fall in love with the music? But this isn't just young people. I'm going to embarrass everybody here. This is the papal inauguration 2005. One person, bottom right-hand corner, trying to get reception in the Vatican. Fast forward 8 years, papal inauguration 2013. Okay? How many people were really there with the Pope? They were too busy documenting it. So I'm going to speed up now, but the importance of passion. Why is passion so important? What do passion and purpose do for us? Well, they fuel determination, creativity, innovation, single-mindedness, sacrifice. Passion and purpose create competition and collaboration. They motivate us. They create the rebels, and the rebels create the future by inventing things, by sacrificing for other people's benefit, by creating art, by reinvention, and by questioning things, as to the point of earlier in the presentation. But I'll finish now, and who better to finish the presentation to, if you like, shout from the rooftops with a rallying cry than the great sage of excess and inspired lunacy, Russell Brand, whose wise words were, "Rebel children, I urge you, fight the turgid slick of conformity with which they seek to smother your glory."